Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. My name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
I am James, also known as Aramithius.
And I'm Andrew, also known as the White Guar.
I'm going to take this opportunity to yawn. Okay, so
Excellent.
today, yeah, great, yeah, everybody loves to hear that. It's
Good start.
Sermon 15, because we're still doing the 36 Lessons of Vivec, and...
We're not even halfway.
Not even halfway.
Nope.
Well, no, but in our defense, the first 18 or so are the really, really complicated ones, and
That's
then
fair. That's fair.
and then they get a little easier.
I guess we're gonna get to the Sermon of Numbers, and that's gonna be pretty quick.
Fucking, it's not going to be quick at all.
No, that's
No,
not.
you don't think so?
Yeah,
No.
no.
There's actual history in there. So
Yeah.
I think we have to
okay.
unpack the Amaranth Hunt at the very least.
Yes, and then we have to do the Amaranth Hunt, and then we also have to talk about the every sermon's meaning after 18 is.
Well,
tough.
you said we're hunting for Amaranth. Well, I found Amaranth on Twitch right here.
Okay. Yeah.
7.5K viewers right now.
And Amaranth only streams in the hot tub category. I don't know what that's about.
I don't know. I'm gonna go look.
You're gonna go look?
Oh.
Okay, let me know how that
Oh
goes.
dear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Anyway.
And there's
Wow,
nothing.
this isn't about Elder Scrolls at all.
No, I was going to say we're verging on OnlyFans territory here, but yes.
Yeah.
Because she actually has
I'd
an
like
OnlyFans. But,
Doesn't she? I don't know.
I'm fairly certain she does. I mean,
I don't know why.
Yeah. Can't
Kind of
imagine
getting
at
it done
all.
on Twitch. You know.
Anyway,
Oh, you went.
Sermon 15. We have just had the pomegranate banquet.
Yes. So Vivec has just knocked out a whole bunch of kitties, and
Yep.
this is the third of the 3 lessons to the ruling kings. And thankfully, this one is done when Vivec's got his head together. Thank Christ.
Like that makes it any easier.
I guess, yeah, true. And encouragingly, it's not entirely about weird shit. It's just about one weird shit. So I'll skip past the intro. The ruling king will remove me, his maker. Let's just start on that. I mentioned this every once in a while, but like a sort of like a trope of Chinese swordsmanship is it is the objective of the student to surpass the teacher, and this sort of relates a little bit to that philosophy of a teacher only succeeds when they've taught their student to be better than when their student is better than they are. But in this particular case, what Vivec's talking about is it's on one hand, it is about removing Vivec as the authority figure of Morrowind. Because it's about Vivec being a ruling king, and therefore, if the Hortator is to be a ruling king, then Vivec must be removed. And it's about oh, thank you, bingo. Yep. And it's about Vivec stepping aside for the Hortator or Nerevar, really the Nerevarine, to sort of protect Morrowind, which he does. But the next line makes it even more interesting, which is, "This is the way of all children." And what that is a reference to is an idea that it's one of the many things that Jung cribbed from mythology. The idea that in the sort of myth structure that Jung used to teach, there's a stage at which the child, who is the patient, has to separate themselves from their parents. For many reasons, developmentally, this is a good idea. This is for just the general sense of independence that all children are trying to reach.
It's coming of age.
Yes, it's related to that. Yeah, and it's about it's about leaving the nest. But it's also about much more dramatic language that Jung used, where he would say things like, that in order for the child to become an adult, they must kill the father.
Yep.
It's about removing the human being. It's about separating the human from the father figure. It's about realizing that you're a father or mother. It's Jung, so it's all like, chauvinist as fuck. So it's like it's the idea of recognizing your parents as not parents, but rather two people, two individuals, two human beings with flaws and etc. And it's about realizing that the father, that your father or mother are not, they don't have it all figured out, and that they don't have a plan, and they're improvising, pulling shit out of their ass just like you are. And that's what Jung would say would mean when he would talk about, like, you have to kill your parents. You have to dismantle them and acknowledge their flaws and forgive them for it, basically, which is an important stage in self-awareness and human psychological evolution. Is there are many people who suffer a great deal when they realize that their father or mother or both are, just as dumbass as they are, and it can be a really tough moment. But
more so in some cases.
In some cases could be even dumber, and that's
Hi, Dad.
Mm-hmm. And it's a difficult thing to come to grips with, and depending on when you realize that, it can be even traumatic, especially for younger kids. A lot of parents who get divorced, like, their kids will spend all kinds of money on therapy because they had to realize at a very young age that their kids make Vivec seem like the forever teacher to the Hortator. Yeah, right? Doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
That's a problem.
It's because it's trying to do two things. At the same time, at one point, the 36 Lessons is trying to prepare the Nerevarine for what Vivec knows the Nerevarine should do or has to do. But on the other, it's there to promote Vivec as the perfect Messiah figure.
Right.
So, in some sense, Vivec cannot, at least under her own terms, cannot become that kind of parent to person evolution, even though that's what Z is saying here. It's not something that Z is actually prepared to do. It's something that kind of has to be done to her.
Yeah, and that's that's something that, I don't think Vivec states it outright, but it's something that Z would probably fight. Because the idea that Vivec will eventually need to be irrelevant. As a matter of fact, it does. It actually comes up in later sermons. Vivec actually talks to Ayam about that, about becoming irrelevant. And Ayam is very kind to him, but I don't think it really sits well with Vivec. And there's also the end of that little engagement kind of makes me feel like Vivec is not really satisfied with that answer, and that's because the answer is kind of bullshit. It's not tremendously helpful. But
no, well, it both is and it isn't, because
it is the truth.
Because it is absolutely the truth, but it's also an encapsulation of this answer that everything is what they are, so to speak. Which, as much as that's the kind of the Jordan Peterson Snoop Dogg, it is what it is.
It is what it is, man. It's deep. It's...
that. You cannot be any more than what you are, but it's a kind of a thing against self-delusion, which is not what Vivec is good at. Vivec has all sorts of self-delusions.
Well, and that's why, it makes me think of what Sota Sil tells us in ESO. Vivec craves radical freedom, the death of all limits and restrictions. He wishes to be all things at all times, every race, every gender, every hero, both divine and finite. But in the end, he can only be Vivec.
Yes.
And then to which you respond, and that's not enough to be a god hero. He says, not even remotely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a God, I love that whole. What a fucking jewel to deep lore fans that you get to. You get to have a one-on-one with Sota Sil and ask him real deep ass shit.
That was a love letter from Lehman Tuttle to us.
It was.
Yes.
It was terrific.
It really was.
really great. His greatest enemy is the Sharmat. Wait, did I cover everything? Yes. Okay. Good. Did that. Oh, I didn't even know that was in there, and I did it. Cool. Okay. His greatest enemy is the Sharmat, who is the false dreamer. So let's. All right. Here, I clicked on that comment, and I've got a whole page full of crap to talk about. So here we go.
Oh yes.
So...
Although I'm kind of curious to kind of juxtapose those two before we get into the weeds. That with the prior sentence, if we're reading ruling king as in an enantiomorph, then the greatest enemy being the Sharmat, you've got the Sharmat and the Hortator as the opposites, but you've also got the idea of ruling king will remove me as a thing, which implies that there's an enantiomorphic relationship between Vivec and the Hortator.
And,
so
a little bit. I think in I think in Vivec's case, Vivec is saying that he is the current ruling king, but that there's going to be a decision between. Well, I'll say this: the ruling king will remove me, his maker, does not necessarily mean the Hortator. It could mean the Sharmat.
That's true.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and that's going back to Sermon 11. Can you tell the difference between the two ones? I can, and that's why because Vivec is the observer.
Yes,
but that's an interesting idea. Except then it gets undone by the sentence we're reading right now, which says his greatest enemy is the Sharmat, who is also the false dreamer. So he is talking about the Hortator.
Yes.
So, but yeah, you're right. But it could be said that that maybe Vivec is suggesting that Z isn't a ruling king, but he does the maker and needs to be removed, like a child does to his parent.
We've talked before when we talked about the enantiomorph, because we did individual episodes on the warrior, the king, and the thief, the mage, and the
we did the full enantiomorphic triad.
And we came to a conclusion that the observer is simply there to collapse the waveform, to decide which of the quantum uncertainty paths we end up in. And I mean, thinking about what Vivec said in Sermon 11 and what's being said here, it sounds to me like Vivec is trying to be the observer for the sake of having that ability of collapsing the waveform, of making the choices, perhaps trying to break free of the determinism that Tess is built into. Even so, the Sill can't escape the determinism. That's something that he talks about to us. I can see the bars, but I can't see the door. You, however, being the prisoner, you can open the door and you can escape. And that's, the Sill making an analogy that you can make choices that we can't. And I wonder if there's a similar thing going on here. Vivec is trying to find a way to maybe not make choices, but influence the direction of reality through an illusion of choice or something like that, through that observer, that role.
Yeah, I mean that to an extent almost goes to the fourth wall interpretation of, can you really have a true observer for an NPC in a computer game? And the idea of Vivec knowing that he's a computer game character, almost, that he's aware of the limitations, so to speak.
And I mean,
it's almost the curse of precognition as well, if you want to take the Dune route for it.
Sure, yeah, and I don't know that. I mean, this is just me kind of exploring an idea here. I don't think this is indicative of meta lore here, but the idea of Vivec attempting to be an observer is something I'm going to keep trying to explore. I think as we keep reading.
I absolutely think Vivec is down as being an observer, but it's being, and I think some of the stuff in Sermon, I'm trying to do this off the top of my head, but I think it was about Sermon 12 or 13 where he talks about rotating the triangle. I'm convinced personally that is when someone is an observer, they are switching the positions of the thief and the king. They are moving the triangle that is the enantiomorph.
I like that.
So I'm convinced that Vivec sees himself as an observer, but also as a ruling king. But then again, this is possibly just the nature of the Elder Scrolls 3, because the whole thing was built upon so many overlapping enantiomorphs.
Yeah, it really
and
was.
It potentially gets to something that's in, it's either Summon 35 or 36, where they go full Zoltron, and they show the world the six. Is it the
I think it's
sixth
36.
path, or
Yeah, the sixth walking way. Yeah, combination of souls.
Yes, and so that to achieve that combination of souls is potentially also to be involved in multiple enantiomorphs. So there's not necessarily a contradiction here. Is potentially what I'm getting at, that that Vivec can be both a thief become king in one enantiomorph and an observer in another.
Yeah. So, but the idea of the Sharmat who is the false dreamer is the way that that's positioned. The grammar of that suggests that there's a true dreamer, which we suppose is probably the current Amaranth, which would be at this level Anu.
But I have an objection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because it then immediately moves on to you or he as the shingle. So within this text, particularly given that I'm sure I remember seeing somewhere that MK hadn't got the Amaranth idea figured out when the 36 Lessons was written. So I think the original intent, if we're going to go with authorial intent here, is that the idea is that the Sharmat is the false dreamer. Does that necessarily make the Nerevarine the true dreamer within this way of looking at it? Because the Hortator and the Sharmat are juxtaposed so much. It makes it very weird to suddenly leap for the Amaranth here as something. Although that is our current understanding of it. It must be said that that the whole idea of the Sharmat having anti-chim and so on, because I am and you are all me, as the current way of doing it. But that's not how it was when this was written.
Yeah, and in fact, in the New Worldling School, that's exactly the suggestion I make, that the Nerevarine is the dreamer, and that I gave you I came up with all these really like wibbly wobbly reasons for it, like for example. The first question Job asks you is, "What is your name?" And the game asks you your name, but the Nerevarine doesn't know his own name. Why doesn't the character know his own name? Why does the game even need to ask you? Is it possible that the Nerevarine didn't have a name before he woke up? Is it even possible that the Nerevarine didn't even exist before he woke up? That, you know, like that he was born on a certain date by uncertain parents, so nobody knows who your parents are. Does that mean that you even have parents?
We're getting into a full-on Messiah conspiracy here.
Yeah, exactly.
The player character is Bendu Olo.
Right.
Every
game it's Bendu Olo. Yeah.
and so every game we gather the All Flags Navy. That's the plot of every single Elder Scrolls game ever. Yeah. Fine.
Well, it would have actually been really easy to definitively like to certainly prove this if there had been just some minor changes in the dialogue of the first of of Elder Scrolls 3 and 4, where I think in Oblivion, I think there could have been a line about they must have brought you here last night or something. I think there actually is a line that sounds vaguely like that, but it's not quite right. And then in Skyrim, they say something like they must have picked you up last night on the road last night or something.
They must have picked you up crossing the border.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of vagueness in how the character's avatar got there, how the player's avatar arrived specifically in that situation, would make it very easy to prove this theory that the player's avatar did not exist before they started the game. Yeah.
And ESO pretty much proves this.
Yeah.
ESO, you look at chaotic creation, the Azuroplasm, it talks about the spontaneous creation of beings with Anuic valence, or Anuic valence, sorry, that are designed to protect and defend the Arabis in some way, almost like an immune response.
Yeah.
So that's almost sounds like what you're talking about, that the player characters are spawned precisely at the moment they are. They don't have
a past or memory or anything. Yeah.
They do not exist in memory because they are there to fulfill an event and to deal with it and to make sure that the universe carries on. And they're created by the Arabis almost, which is
quick aside for those folks who aren't familiar with Bendu Olo, because I mentioned him. Bendu Olo used to be the default character name in like in Morrowind's early builds. The player's name was Bendu, and I think you could change it. And then he became I think he comes from Star Wars originally.
Is it?
I think
okay. I thought it was somebody's player D&D character name or something.
It sounds kind of Star Warsy.
Yeah.
If you look at the trick is, if you look at some of the trailers for the early games, like Morrowind's trailer had this, Oblivion's trailer had this. I'm not sure if it carried on for Skyrim, because I don't think you ever see a proper interface in Skyrim's trailer. But all of those always have Bendu Olo as the name. It was a placeholder name as well as being a character in the lore.
Yeah, I'm looking at USP here. In Oblivion, Bendu Olo's name appears as the default name of the player character through the construction set in Skyrim. Example character in the game manual and the official tutorial for creating a quest is Bendu Olo. That's in the creation kit. And in the preview video for Blades shown at E3 in 2018, and character creation, the name of the player character was Bendu Olo.
Of course, Bendu Olo,
And then I think it was ESO that added the lore about Bendu Olo being a famous navigator in Gonfalon Bay.
I know. I think that was before that, because I'm pretty sure I knew about Bendu Olo before I even started writing the New Worldling School. So I think that's
Bendu Olo as the assembler of the All Flags Navy definitely existed before that.
Then that is my mistake.
It's an easy one to make, but it's also one of those things like one of those things that companies like to do. Just as a total aside, it's similar to if you watch far too many smartphone unveilings, you will always have, like, the iPhone will show on its displays a particular time. The Sony Xperia models will show a particular time. Samsung Galaxies will always show a particular time, because that's their filler stuff.
And at my D&D table, every barkeep is Hulk Hogan. That's just the way it goes.
Hulk Hogan.
Just the mustache and the bandanas, just slinging beers and whatever, like Nurse Joy style. It's great.
What kind of drink can I get you, brother? Yeah,
exactly. I see. At first, he just started as just a barkeep with the Hulk Hogan mustache, and then he sounded more and more like Hulk Hogan. And at the end, I was just like, piss on it. He's Hulk Hogan, like literally Hulk Hogan.
There it is.
Just it's him.
Yeah.
Russian beer cans, flexing pythons.
Yep.
Beware the wrong walking path. So, which of the 6 walking ways are we talking about here?
We've missed a bit. We've missed the shingle.
I did. You or he is the shingle. Yes. So this is back in Sermon 10, where we say that Sithis will sunder the hole for the sake of the shingle, and the hole referring to a house. And
although I did look it up, and shingle does have another definition as well.
I think we all did.
Yeah.
Independently.
Just before we started this cast, James and I were looking.
Yeah.
Okay, so we arrived at the same. The small rounded pebbles usually on a shore.
No.
That's
it's
that's
actually,
what I got.
Also, a woman's haircut.
It's actually a particular technique for roofing.
Oh yeah. I knew that. Like shingles, that's but a mass of small rounded pebbles, especially on a seashore. That's what I found when I looked up shingle through Oxford. So it makes me wonder if it's small rounded pebbles. Like I'm wondering if this is a metaphor inside a metaphor. That Chris doesn't like that. I let the rounded pebbles. They're small stones. Stones are equitable to history. I mean, could those be the choices that the individual made in the past? Those are that individual's history, and therefore they are a shingle.
Maybe because blast. I'm sorry. I'm just connecting words here. That shingle on a beach is where I hear it. As you say, it's kind of like it's the stuff that's just bigger than a grain of sand. But given that, but the idea of shingle on a beach, as Dagoth claims to be an ancient sea,
There you
is
go.
I don't know if there's anything we can draw out there. Simply simply because, but I don't know, the stuff we were talking about as to shingle being a roof, whether we can tie that to the idea of Sithis as the beginning of the house,
or the house of trouble.
Sithis is the beginning of all houses. Sithis is the true start of all houses. Yeah.
And how do you finish a house?
You put the roof on.
You put the roof on.
The last thing you do.
You christen it with a bottle of wine.
I thought there was ships. You do that for ships.
Same diff.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, you do. You do actually do that for ships. I think Andrew is pulling appendages here.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
I am.
Right.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm using a malaphor.
Oh.
But
So
the idea of the Sithis being the foundation of the house, and you've got the four corners and everything else, and then you've got the Nerevarine or the Hortator or the Hortator or the Dagoth finishing off the house. That this is kind of actually it's almost foreshadowing the Red Year. Thinking about it, because Nerevarine completes the house that is the Dunmer people, and then it gets obliterated. That if we think of the house as Morrowind, then the last act of Morrowind is kind of to create the Nerevarine, the Hortator, and so on, and then the Red Year happens. So Morrowind's development functionally stops after the Nerevarine. So Dagoth and Dagoth's plans of the idea of kind of rolling out to conquer all of Tamriel, kind of as the crowning achievement of the Chimer Dunmer people, as part of his conquest for the Blight and so on. That's sort of would be the crowning achievement of the Chimer as it happens. So kind of the capstone, the finishing thing, the shingle, in terms of the roof to finish off the house. I don't know whether that's me just overextending a metaphor, but
no. I mean, I feel like there are more obvious words that could be used. Oh, shush. Yeah, I know. I don't know what you want. Like a wait. Like a keystone, for example.
Yeah.
Keystone.
Or capstone. I mean, there's so many other words that
the stone the builders rejected have become the capstone, and here we dive into the Psalms.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to infer that I understand the author's original intention, but I strongly suspect that the point of the shingle metaphor is that that Sithis will destroy an entire house just for the sake of one small part of it.
I mean, we could just FaceTime Kirkbride and ask him.
That's rude.
I think he'd be annoyed about this.
I try not to bother him with stuff like this.
Yes.
Isn't there something called a shingle leech? Could be. So.
Yes. And that's what I was referring to earlier.
So, beware the wrong walking path. I think is about. Is about becoming a ruling king through the wrong methods. But not necessarily badly or, failure, but just not the way that Vivec would encourage.
Yes, and this sort of gets tied in with anti-chim and that sort of thing by the community, but I'm not so sure that that's quite the case, or at least I don't think that's what Vivec is trying to achieve with the 36 lessons. because you have various other things, like there is one philosophy that uses only denial or words to that effect, and that's referring to the Dwemer, and as far as I can tell, or at least it's strongly implied to be the Dwemer, but inferred to be that by the community in various ways. And you look at the plan to defeat Dagothr and Dagothr's plans and that sort of stuff, and it talks about he recapitulates the ancient folly of the Dwemer. There's a lot of stuff indicating that the kind of the original sin and that sort of thing of Dagothr and how that sort of happens has its origins with the Dwemer, because hell, Kagrenac gets called the first blighter at some point or another. So whether this is trying to point out that the wrong walking path is what the Dwemer did, and everything kind of flows from there.
So then Numidium would be the false, or the wrong path.
Yes.
Which makes sense for Vivec to be like, yeah, avoid that. but then it could also be a way to keep the Hortator away from the heart, maybe. Avoid Numidium and so avoid the heart. I don't know. I mean,
the pedant in me also wants to say that they don't mention Dagothr by name here, but they talk about the Sharmat, which I personally have come around to thinking of as the cultural enemy of the Dunmer of any given time, or Chimer or Dunmer. So the idea of the first blighter, and Kagrenac being the first blighter, was Kagrenac the first Sharmat?
I know there is an idea of the Sharmat, all caps, being an extra or an entity from outside the dream, trying to usurp the dream, so to become the dreamer. I think I wrote a thing once that was actually super shitty, that kind of explored the idea. I tried to write a thing.
Sharmat, Space Invader.
It was in the previous dream. So it was in Yokuda, and it was the dreamer Anu, and his father's name was Sharmat, and Sharmat was trying to wake Anu up after he had murdered his wife Nur. And so Sharmat trying to wake up Anu, trying to steal the dream from him, was something like I kind of played with it, like I wrote it in a terrible way, but the idea was kind of cool. I was just crap at expressing
it. It depends on quite how far you think of these as metaphysical absolutes, and not just the constructs of the chimera Dunmurray religious
pull it up
order.
if anyone's interested.
But yeah, that's about as much as I've got to kind of pull that through my skull. But yeah, I don't know how much that actually makes any sense, but that's what I was going with.
Well, we could talk about the crime of benevolence,
which could also be the same thing.
Yeah. Which is...
crime of benevolence could be the wrong walking path.
It could be. It could be just simple. It's just an encouragement to not forgive. Which is definitely something that I think Vivec should be warning the Nerevarine about, because if you do any kind of research into Dagothr's past as Borin Dagoth, you'll find out shit did not go well with him.
Nope.
And it is a shame, but yeah.
And it kind of ties in with Vivec's message in the book Sithis. The whole kind of go on to Dagothr as a friend and then stab him in the guts.
That's not what Sithis says.
It was my reading of it was that Lorcan presented himself to the Aedra as one of them, while not necessarily being one of them, in order to achieve his own aims, and in doing so screwed the Aedra over, and so the Nerevarine should do likewise to Dagothr. That was how I read it.
So I think we've covered the Dagothr extensively. We're probably going to whip through this pretty quick. So I'm going to kind of skip over explaining the Borin Dagoth's past and the conversation that he has with Lorcan while guarding the heart, etc. And exposition. Yeah, I know several writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards. So let's.
Sorry, just rereading that. Beware the crime of benevolence.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember this sort of ties in with some Aristotelian philosophy-ish, and I'm a bit fuzzy on the specifics.
Do you think Vivek is an objectivist?
I'm not about to even
Rand?
think about trying to compare Vivek to Ayn Rand. that way madness lies. But the idea of but the idea of Aristotle's was that a ruler should be magnanimous, and that's a very specific use. That it's almost, I can't remember precisely, so I may be getting this horribly wrong. But the way I process it is the idea that it's showing mercy appropriately and showing grace in appropriate measure, given that Aristotle was very, very much about the golden mean gets overused, but it's about and the idea of everything in moderation is not what Aristotle said, but it's about showing emotion or reason or whatever as appropriate to the situation. So if so it's not a case of you should only be moderately aggrieved if someone mows your wife down in the street. No, what's appropriate there is for you to absolutely want to rip that guy's guts out.
Yeah.
And be absolutely distraught that your wife is dead. Because that's an appropriate response. So but benevolence is something that could be seen as mercy, as excessive kindness.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of a ruler needing to be everything as most appropriate, which is what Machiavelli is saying in The Prince, that that a ruler is as kind or cruel or
as the situation demands,
as heartless as the situation demands to get the job done. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a certain amount of like that sort of requires a strong faith in the idea of a objective.
Yeah.
And once you apply subjectivity and complexity into everyday situations, there's no appropriate anything. It's all everything.
Yeah.
Everybody's acting inappropriately.
Yeah, that's true. But
so anyway, poem. Yes. Beholden by his words, I am the Sharmat, I am older than music. Okay.
Who lines it?
So,
hold on.
Cuckoo, yes. I think this. Okay, sure. We read a whole lot into everything. That's what we do here. But for me to sit here and talk about how someone could literally or even metaphorically be actually older than music in the Elder Scrolls universe, we would never get. This would be a 3-hour cat.
Yeah, I mean, there's. I mean, we could talk about Sheogorath in there and the Courts of Madness and the creation of music. We could talk about relationship to the metaphysics of the Lord of the Rings and how that influenced the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah,
Johnny Anonymous in chat just brought that up. Yeah.
Oh, did he? I don't have it open.
Yeah, about the singing of the world. Yeah.
Yes, the Song of Arda.
Yep.
And it's. I think in this particular case, this is just a metaphor for I'm real old, you know. I don't really think that. I mean, we could go on, for quite some time.
Should we just assume it's a metaphor for now? And then
I would be taking that it's a claim. Bearing in mind this is Vivek speaking for the Sharmat, so
that's a good question actually. Let's talk about that for a second. Is this the Sharmat's words, which Vivek suggests that this is the Sharmat speaking directly?
Well, not even suggests, he already says.
Yeah.
Behold him by his words.
Is it the Sharmat doing like a guest, like a guest vocals on a Vivek track, or is it like, or is it Vivek? Is this one of the things that the Sharmat's been screaming at Vivek through the ether, and
like
Vivek just wrote it down one day?
Vivek is prog rock, and then the Sharmat comes in with just the death metal.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, they didn't even know that Dagoth was actually still around and active until about 200 years before the Elder Scrolls 3. I mean, we don't know when the 36 lessons were written.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we're never given a timeline on that. We know it's before the events of ESO, so prior to 2E 538, I think is the year.
Sure, but then at the same time, that means that Vivek is talking to the people of the of Morrowind about Dagoth who had not existed at that point.
Yes, but it's a heck of a lot easier to have a totalitarian state when you've got an enemy to defend against.
Dagoth did exist in the very first quest you do in Morrowind. In the X-Pack.
Somebody's sleeping and getting nightmares.
You question a ghost in ESO. Talking about ESO here. You question a ghost, and the questions are vague. But if you've played Morrowind, you know what the questions are asking. So they're asking about the heart and the state of it, asking about Dagoth, is he awake yet? And then I don't remember what the other one is. Like, are we going to lose our power? Something like that. And the ghost gives us information. So, I mean, it may not be outright said, but Dagoth is kind of looming somewhere. And then there's also a public dungeon you can go into where you go to Kogaroon, the seat of power of House Dagoth. And you get to go.
It's a very fun dungeon.
It's super cool, yeah. And so I mean, Dagoth, I mean, he was, the whole thing with Nerevar. I mean, that happened at the War of the First Council, which was what, mid First Era, something like that.
Not mid, early.
Not mid, early. I was trying to be conservative. So, I mean, we know that the idea of Dagoth exists, and we know that, or at least I think it can be assumed that the tribunal, or at least Vivec, is aware of how pissed off Azura is, and that she may be bringing back Nerevar. And so, of course, Vivec is going to write this for whichever Nerevar is the correct Nerevarine at the time, which ends up being us in Morrowind.
Yeah, I can see that.
S3.
Okay.
So it's I don't know when he's going to show up, but here's some general instructions. When you do, here they are.
That's a good point. He's not writing this to the Nerevarine. Vivec is writing this to a Nerevarine.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to fill in these shoes, here's a guide.
I'm personally convinced that this is Vivec putting words in the Sharmat's mouth.
Okay.
But
I think, if I recall correctly, I think Kirkbride outright confirmed that this Dagoth, or while tripping balls is the phrase he used. So
that's right. I remember that. He was tripping balls on like God juice or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I bring is light. We'll do them all. What I bring is light. What I bring is a star. What I bring is an ancient sea. So this is more of the symbolism of the drowned lamp, but it's also like light and a star are both symbols that are used a lot in Western esotericism and dilemma and other magical practices for God.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, no, I'm just throwing beer all over myself.
Oh, good. And so we've mentioned the poem of, understand that synthesis still travels in a phosphorescent mirror of the sky. The metaphor of the drowned lamp. These are all things that Dagothar is talking about here. He's talking about a vast memory, by which he speaks of as an ancient sea, and I believe that the ancient sea that he is talking about is either he's talking about his own memory or the memory of House Dagoth in general, or Dagothar thought he was a god, so it's like this idea of a, this. He's talking about what big brain he is,
Yeah.
But I had this thought while I was out walking my dog earlier. I wonder if an ancient sea is a reference to the memory of the Numidium, since Dagothar is building something similar to the Numidium. I'm wondering if maybe that's what Dagothar is referring to here, is the memory of the Dwemer. Ancient because of how old they are.
Yeah, I can see where you're going. I don't.
Yeah.
The puzzle piece doesn't fit for me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's close, but
it's operating according to a tribunal assumption of what Dagothar is up to. Because as I say, that in the discussion of what the tribunal temple think Dagothar's plans are, there is the line, he recapitulates the ancient sin of the Dwemer. So
yeah, except that the ancient sin of the Dwemer could have been they built this big fuck off weapon.
Yeah.
But the ancient sin of the Dwemer was not that they built a giant weapon, it's that they tried to destroy all of reality.
Or that they just tried to make a god.
Or sure, that too.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, the tribunal poo-pooing all over the Dwemer for trying to build a god is sort of the pot calling the kettle black. But
oh yeah, totally.
But I mean, maybe that's exactly why that's what they're saying.
That's that. Well, it's also propaganda. We're real gods. That's not real.
Yeah,
and it also fits right in with the standards Dunmer hypocrisy of what you're doing is necromancy, what we're doing is proper subjugation.
No, we're very polite when we summon the dead.
I think I read somewhere.
No, we're not polite when we summon your dead, because your dead don't matter.
Fuck you. But our dead.
I've heard it two ways as far as necromancy in like Dunmer tombs. Either it's a punishment that you're forced to protect the family for all eternity, or it's an honor that you get to protect the family for all eternity. I feel like I've heard it both ways, but I can't.
The book Ancestors and the Dharma puts it both ways, that it's something that an ancestor is expected to do, and they are honored when they do that, and when they don't, they are forced to do it.
Gotcha.
Generally by either the other living members of the family and any other spirits that they can cajole into doing it from their family.
Peer pressure undead.
Yeah, peer pressure, absolutely. Yeah, I also have to applaud Barker
Circle
for
of Skeletons be like, no man, come on, try it. It's great.
The pot calling the
I
kettle
also have to applaud Barker for his absolutely fantastic shit posting in the chat.
One of them's
right
just
now.
got like a lit joint, like, oh yeah, you want to try this, man?
You don't want none of this, Dewey.
No.
Dewey Cox. Oh man.
It doesn't. It's very inexpensive.
You don't want none of this shit, Dewey. Get out of here.
Oh, and before it disappears,
before
it disappears beyond the horizon, Luke Skywalker. What I bring is a light. He's also pointing out Lucifer. as a comparison there. Is that something that we think has mileage? I mean, the Sharmat absolutely is a devil figure, but I don't know whether there's anything that was
in the sense of an adversary, the old school definition of
Lucifer as the
Satan,
adversary.
Shaitan, I think is the word.
Or however it's done in Hebrew.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what. I wonder whether there's any connection to be made with Raman here, but
I mean,
it's a reach, but he was called the Light of Man.
I think it's as simple as what Chris said earlier, that light and star, that's language that's used very often in this mysticism, Thelema, Crowley kind of thing. I mean, it's I mean, even in Dungeons and Dragons, for example, I can think of there's an evil entity my party encountered. I don't remember what his name was, but he was called the Corpse Star. And so he was I don't remember what his deal was. I think he could raise the dead. Like if you accepted his dark gift, you could raise the dead like once a day, but all your teeth fell out or something like that.
Is this Borg? Is it?
No. This is left over from. So we did Ravenloft, Curse of Strahd a couple years ago, and there's a bit where you find you find this temple, and beneath it there are effigies or sarcophagi that are filled with evil gods that have essentially been forced into these spots. And my party, of course, released all of them. And so I turned that into a multiverse story where we traveled to Tamriel to go and fight one of these gods.
Within the actual campaign setting, they just will bestow gifts on you for a price.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So like Tarachamedes, the grave worm, he will grant you bone wings, and so you can fly. But actually, I think it's him. You have to eat grave dirt.
Yes,
every day to survive.
You can eat nothing but grave dirt and bone meal for the rest of your life in order to be granted bone wings. There's another one that I can't remember quite what happens, but
here's my Tarachamedes.
But the price is your the price is your eyes. I mean, it's not your sight. It's explicitly your eyes.
Yeah.
So you can see perfectly fine, but you have empty sockets. It's a very weird.
Yeah, there's another one that adds like a third eye. There's another one that covers you in fur and like warts and like.
I missed out playing through that module.
One of our party members accepted like 8 of them, and he was using disguise self to look normal.
Anyway,
Anyway,
we should probably get back to Vivec.
When you sleep, you see me dancing at the core. This is, I mean, I don't know if this is a reference to it, but Dagothar does contact the player when the player sleeps at certain points in the plot.
This is just
that's a nod to Morrowind's plot. Totally.
When you sleep, there I am, because that's kind of my home, and that nugget in the back of your mind. I'm the core. That's where I'm at, and you don't know I'm there until you sleep.
But it also kind of nails down the idea of any ideas of kind of like the core, the center, or whatever. That generally speaking, within 36 Lessons now, if you think about the center, always think back to the heart of Lorcan and all of the things that brings about.
Yeah,
the omni-axle,
or the axle of the wheel. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's where Dagothar thinks he is in, he thinks that the whole world revolves around him. So, anyway, it is not a blight, it is my house. This is, I mean, he's talking about the porpoise blight.
Yes, and this is a gift. This is not a disease. This is something to rejoice over.
Oh, it's also a part of him. It's a part of, in the same respect that House Dagoth was a part of Boran Dagoth.
Which it reminds me of some of Kirkbride's old concept art for this stuff, because the idea was that you get access to divinity. Like you look at divinity in the old school, like Greek. If you look at a god in their full splendor, you die. Like
you just die.
That's just so. Then we get
Yep.
some of the art of like the ash ghouls or whatever, and their heads are bursted open because they've witnessed God and their brains just couldn't handle it, and now they're these husk kind of things, and that's, I always thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
We went through 5 Adams before we figured that out.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dogma is beautiful. Go watch it if you haven't.
It's a great movie. Yeah, it's hard to find though because of the.
Is it?
Yeah, it's hard to find because of the publisher and the people who own the rights to it don't want to print and don't want to put it onto streaming services. And so it's actually somewhat difficult to get. It's actually something Kevin Smith's kind of struggling with right now, is getting a Dogma back into people's hands, because it's. But if you try the high seas, matey, you should have no problem at all.
Oh yeah.
I put a star into the world's mouth to murder it. Okay, so.
Ooh.
I talk a little bit about the world's mouth in Sermon 17. I talk a lot about it, but it's a it reminds me. There's a lot of like funeral practices and cultural things about putting things in people's mouths, filling someone's mouth with ash, etc.
Or with birds.
Also a thing that happens in Dracula after they find Lucy, and she's been converted into a vampire and she's eating children now. After she goes back into her sarcophagus, they cut off her head and they stick a chunk of garlic in her mouth.
Right. Yeah.
That's.
I also seem to remember that Vivec stuffed someone's mouth with birds.
Yes. Yeah.
I seem to remember Vivec stuffing someone else's mouth with Muatra.
Yeah.
Yes,
and so and murder is, I mean, this is 36 lessons metaphors we're talking about here. That's all kinds of
Yep.
Tear down the pylons. What pylons we're talking about?
Well, obviously
not
the ones
Minecraft.
we built
It did not exist.
The ones we built in StarCraft.
The additional pylon. Yes.
Yes.
We constructed additional pylons.
He's saying no. We don't need additional pylons. We're fine.
Yes. We're fine. We're fine. We're gonna send our zealots off to get killed so that we can replace them with stalkers, because our opponent's going Marine Medic, and that's how you counter bio. At least in the mid game. At the end game, you go carriers.
It's all about that. It's all about that Zergrash.
Mass carriers with 1/1 upgrade. But anyway. I used to watch a lot of StarCraft. Okay.
Yeah, it shows.
So pylons. We could be talking about the towers. It could be we could be talking about the Ghost Gates pylons.
Yep. Although actually, I don't think the Ghost Fence was erected until after the Blight started.
Yeah.
No.
But anyway, blind fish. Who are the blind fish? I brought up Mark 1:16 to 18.
What?
I will make you fishers of men.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The blind. If you're doing that sort of blind fish, people who don't understand what's going on. The unenlightened, the lost.
Yeah, wandering around through memory aimlessly. Maybe.
So it's tear down the pylons, my blind fish swim in the new phlogiston. Phlogiston is a one of my favorite things about old science. Where they used to think flame came from. It was a substance that was trapped in all things that were inflammable, whatever. And when you set something on fire, you were releasing the phlogiston. And that was what you saw. The flames was phlogiston, and so it was And early science is so much fun. We all know that it's not phlogiston now. It's obviously it's ether.
Yeah.
Bizarrely enough, there is something that actually vaguely backed that up. But...
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
It's a thing in Spelljammer.
It's the reason why They're the crystals around planets, if I recall correctly, or planes, is because is to keep out the phlogiston, I think.
Also known as the rainbow ether or the rainbow ocean, the phlogiston is an infinite fog of swirling colors within which the crystal spheres bob up and down like ...
But if it's talking about swimming the new phlogiston, that it's basically Dagoth here is predicting some sort of destruction. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Well,
it's because in order to get phlogiston, things need to burn. So
yeah, it's
you've got to tear down the pylons.
I wonder.
Some just want to watch the world burn.
Well,
It's basically what that comes down to.
Is this a declaration of his intent? I'm going to tear down the world and remake it in my image.
Quite possibly.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of it's all going to be him anyway. So yeah, set the whole place on fire.
Yeah. So the new phlogiston, which is me. I am your new world.
So tear down the pylons, my deaf moons, sing and burn and orbit me. I didn't even I didn't touch too much about moons because I was like, oh fuck.
It just sounds like followers.
Yeah.
Satellites, people that are nearby.
Yeah.
Sing and burn. Well, burn related to phlogiston, maybe.
Yeah. Singing is also like a lot of the early concept art for Dagoth's monsters were like they were playing the flutes on their faces were turning into music.
Yeah, the Ascended Sleepers can play their trunks.
And like music was supposed to be a big thing. They were going to do a bunch of stuff about the sleepers playing music, and the music that they played had significance. And then there was going to be this had to do with the bells of I think James is having problems again. Ascended bagpipes, something like that. Yeah, he had internet problems before we started, so I think
and all of this stuff, because it's super fucking rad. I like to include it in my table, so my players get to experience that stuff, which is fun. I had to use Ascended Sleepers to bypass a character's ability to trip. Because it was wrecking all my combats.
Is that kind of association with music why we have kind of the bells and stuff in the sixth house?
There was going to be a quest for the bells in Dagoth, the House Dagoth bell, but I can't find anybody at Bethesda who remembers what it was.
I wish that bell hammer were more useful, because it's a cool
looking weapon,
model.
right?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Cool. Like, I wish we could hit the bells with it and produce effects like that. That would have been neat. I'm sure there's a mod for that, maybe. Or if there's not, we can make one. Wouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, but the whole kind of... No, I don't know where I'm going with that. Yeah.
Me neither.
Don't mind me.
So we recap. I'm older than music. What I bring is a light. What does bring is a star. What I bring is an ancient sea. And...
Horus.
We're back to we hit him with the outro, and we're back to
random thought.
Could you
on Ancient Sea? Does Dagoth ever think about? There's nothing in there about ever bringing back a previous Kalpa or anything like that. But if water is memory and that sort of stuff, and if it's an ancient sea, then that to me says, are we going that far back?
I think he's referring to himself. He is the ancient sea because of how much memory he holds.
Oh, because he is the whole cosmos.
Because he is older than music.
He's everything. Everybody is him anyway. So
what I bring is an ancient sea. I am the vast ocean.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if Dagoth is nothing else but a huge narcissist, which you kind of have to be in his situation.
Well,
to get done what he wants to get done. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. To arrive at the conclusions he arrives at, you have to be a narcissist.
So you alone, though you come again and again, can make him. This is Vivec putting a cap on, like summoning everything, summing everything up in a nice, big, concise, easy to understand closing.
Though you come again and again, there's pointing out that Vivec isn't making it for. I mean, he's making it for the Nerevarine, but he doesn't know which one it's going to.
Exactly.
Be.
Yeah. Whether I allow it is within my wisdom. Again, it's up to Vivec to decide. which one.
And it's also a fourth wall nod to, yes, you will die a lot of times in the game
Yeah.
before you get
No, yeah, okay. Go unarmed
that.
into his den with these words of power. A Gartok Padme Chim A Altadun. This is the hands of change become the weapons of reality.
Or of royalty.
Excuse me. And so it's I don't know why Vivec says go unarmed into the you cut off your hands before going in front of God, but that's not this is not the God that we were talking about.
Translate that for me one time, because what I'm getting is become hand, chaos, royalty is sword.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's the way it is with this kind of stuff. Is you have to put a little. You have to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, like just paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I love this too. It says, "Go unarmed into his den with these words of power: A Gartok Padme Chim A Altitude, or do not,
or do not,
or don't." Hey, hey, man, I'm not a cop. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny
you don't
because
have to do this.
Yeah.
If you show up without Kagranak's tools, Dagothar fucking taunts you. But why have you come unprepared?
Yeah.
Or if you bring the false copy of Sunder.
Mm-hmm. You
fool,
can you not tell the difference? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, poor you.
Where do you even find that in the game? I don't
know that you can.
The false copy of Sunder? Yeah. You wait, can't you?
I think it's in the construction set, and it was intended to be a thing, but I don't think it was ever actually implemented. You're told where the it might be if you go the back route, where you
kill off somebody's body.
Yeah, you kill Vivec, you got to go to Kagranak to restore Wraithguard, and
Yagran back on.
Or Kagranak, Yagran Bagar. And then I think you end up, because it's so much more open-ended that way, you're not told where to go or what to do. It's just figure it out. And I think a lot of that is exploring the interior of Red Mountain, and I think maybe you can find it that way, like it's in just one of the Dwemer ruins that's there.
Yeah.
It's just not the right one.
If it's not, it's certainly a cool thing that should be modded in at some point.
I do love the idea that there are players out there who walked into Red Mountain like all geared up and like tweaked and like had not done any of the main plot line, like completely oblivious to what was going on, and just walked around and just fucked shit up in these Dwemer ruins, and then found this stuff. You know, I just love the idea that somebody would have that experience of like. Of like kicking down the door to Red Mountain.
They find the real Sunder, and then it kills them. Because they don't have Wraithguard.
Well, you could get, but I mean, and then because you're already a weirdo, you're already probably enchanting resist magic to, you know.
I mean, if you're wearing the Cuirass of Saber's hide, I think it might save you from most of that.
Anyway, the temporal myth is man, reach heaven by violence. Speaking of kicking down Dagathar's door.
Yes.
This magic I give you, the world you will rule, is only an intermittent hope, and you must be the letter written in uncertainty. That sounds like a great name for a podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely, it does. Yes.
Pretty good.
So, an intermittent hope is from a previous sermon. Intermittent hope's enough to answer all the things not yet queried. What we're talking about is the mundus in general. Is an intermittent hope a brief sort of prayer to hopefully get out of the Kalpic cycle,
which sounds a lot like Nirvana.
Yeah. And you must be the letter written in uncertainty, I still think is a reference to Chim, but lots of people can argue very successfully against that. And I say that because the Chim is a symbol, i.e. a letter that is constantly shifting, so it's uncertain of itself.
Yeah, well, I think the letter written in uncertainty is a reference to the prisoner's ability to not be bound by causality.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's your ability to be anything else.
Although that presupposes that the Nerevarine is a prisoner, and I don't know that Vivec would be aware of that. I mean, maybe he would. But I mean, the only one we've ever, I mean, does Vivec ever talk about prisoners? I don't.
Not prisoners in terms of like thieves and stuff.
Yeah,
the only person who speaks about prisoners really
So
in
still,
the Elder Scrolls 3 is Zurin Arctus.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Is the intro quote, and that's it.
yeah. I mean, because Sotha still talks about prisoners.
Yeah.
In ESO.
In ESO, but I'm thinking about when this was written and what this is intended to be referencing.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Authorial intent is
the world you will rule is only
issue.
intermittent hope. I wonder if that's a reference to Fourth Wall Break. You know, you only have you know, you have little sessions where you sit and you play your game. It's
you have the span of this game, to do things.
I mean, that's how it used to be for me. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. so I could play Morrowind for 2 hours, then go to school, and then come back home and play Morrowind some more. And I actually got up extra early because those fucking load screens on Xbox were killer.
Yeah, I'm like, collectively, you must have got a whole 20 minutes of gameplay in.
yeah.
Well, like they had to reboot the system over and over again, so,
Although, I'm just thinking that this magic I give you is an interesting way to preface all that. That the idea of, this world is only an intermittent hope. This world is only a maybe. And so you must be a letter written in uncertainty. You must be something uncertain, something unclear. And it's also kind of a nod back to the previous use of that phrase, which I think was the whole idea of I am the form he must acquire sort of stuff, that everything is unclear. You can be male or female, you can be any race and all that.
Yeah.
It's again another nod to that.
Well, I think the magic I give to you, I think is Vivec being like, I'm the one telling you this. You only have these thoughts because of what I've given you, which is sermons. So
hang on, all this magic could just be referring to the previous few sentences.
No, this magic I give to you, colon.
Okay. That structures.
So it's magic, wisdom, maybe a little bit of that.
It could be less literal magic and more, I don't know.
Maybe I've spoken to Kirkbride a couple of times about his belief in magic, but I've never really been able to dig into it, and it's always kind of fascinated me because he's really serious about it, and I have a hard time taking magic seriously. That's possibly a shortcoming of mine when it comes to what I study.
what was it that was supposed to have a spell in it? Was it
36 Lessons of Vivec?
Oh, it was. Okay.
No. The bit that I think Andrew is thinking about is the Magna Gay Pantheon, because Kirkbride referred to that as being a Tinderlost trap.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I think it was that, and then I remember reading, because he mentioned it, and he was like, I kind of regret doing that.
Yeah, well, he told me that his intention with the 36 lessons was to make it 40 books, that he wanted to have actual magic in the game.
Yeah.
And so that was...
Yes. But then again, I don't know whether his idea of magic in the real world is something similar to the way Alan Moore processes it.
Right. Or is it more... Is it less Alan Moore and more... whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Fuck it. I can't remember the guy's name. But it's about ritual versus chaos magic. Sort of.
Yeah. And because the way I understand Alan Moore's understanding of magic, having read all of 1.5 articles on the whole thing, which of course makes me an expert.
We're talking Watchmen Alan Moore, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Is that he sees magic as the ability to influence the world, through whatever means that may be. He created one comic explicitly.
Grant
I can't
Morrison,
remember
thank
which.
you, Johnny. Yes. Grant Morrison is who I was thinking of.
Okay. But Alan Moore created one comic specifically. I can't remember which one, as a spell that he was intending, or as some form of magic to influence the world in some particular way, because it was because it was through the impressions he wanted to impose upon the reader. There wasn't anything that we would really register as supernatural about it. It was that he was going to change the world through this book because of what it would achieve in the people who read it. And so is that sort of thing. The idea in this, or the idea that Kirkbride was trying to achieve with the 36 lessons, rather. I don't know whether that's true or not, but
yeah, well, because when I talked to Kirkbride about the 36 lessons, because I had that opportunity a couple years ago to kind of pick his brain about it when he was in a good mood on Reddit. And he never once mentioned that, but it may have also been, hey, we're on Reddit and in public, and he just didn't feel like talking about it.
Fair enough.
But he made it sound like the 36 lessons, like cranking them out, was a slog to just bust them out. He said it took him a week. I don't know that he didn't tell me he wanted to do 40. He said he was trying to.
He was contracted to do 40.
What? 40 overall books. Yeah, and the 36 sermons were 36 of them. That's right. And he mentioned that one of the big challenges was trying to figure out how to put the skill increases into certain books.
Yeah.
So he had to change the content to have a little bit to do with the skill that it was missing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the Sermon of the Mace is one that he just so he could have a mace skill increase that he was like assigned. Yeah, make a book that has the skill increase.
Oh, and that's one of my favorites in terms of
skill.
symbolism. The idea of that being broken is just annoys me.
That's why go unarmed into this den with these words of power. That's where that line comes from. This sermon 15 is the unarmed skill.
Yeah,
that's why that's there. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
It probably is. I mean, I'm actually not kidding. It probably is the reason why it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he never gave me any inclination about that, and I feel like, I mean, again, it could be because we were on Reddit, and I mean, he was in a good mood though. Yeah, someone on like Polygon had written an article about how the 36 lessons were like the smartest lore book in any game anywhere.
Yeah,
like it's incredible. And so it was just giving Kirkbride all kinds of props, and he was like, hey, this makes me feel really great. Yeah, I'll answer some questions. And then he yelled at me for trying to interview him, but he was joking. He's like, you're turning to do an interview, I'm on to you.
Is it Morrowind and oral history? No, might be.
No, it was explicitly about the 36 lessons, if I remember that particular article.
I can probably find it.
I can't remember.
The white guar has left Facebook, or not Facebook,
Reddit.
Yeah, I don't.
Fair enough.
Don't mod Tesla anymore. I don't. The white guar is currently suspended permanently.
Yep. Anyway, we should probably finish up.
Why Morrowind's 36 Lessons of Vivec is the greatest piece of etc. It's Den of Geek.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
It's which, sorry?
denofgeek.com.
Oh, Den of Geek. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, there it is.
And would you look at who's in the credits at the bottom of their article?
Is it me?
No, it's me.
Oh, it's
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. So,
anyway, let's
end of the thing.
We've got a few more bits to wrap up. The temporal myth is man. We have already talked about that.
Yeah.
That's
did already discuss that.
Yeah, that's a refrain.
But why is it here is what I want to talk about with that.
Well, he's recapping the 3 lessons that he's taught the Horde Store up to this point.
Yeah, it's
makes sense.
A conclusion, which funnily enough, I just taught a lesson about this the other day.
Yeah,
which structuring an essay and having the conclusion at the bottom and restating your main points and your introductory.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
the temporal myth is man, reach heaven by violence. Yeah, again, second lesson of ruling kings.
Yeah,
and then the third one is the world that you will rule is only an intermittent hope, and you must be the letter written in uncertainty.
So, what do you think? What are ways to interpret the letter written in uncertainty? It was we brought up the idea of the player being the, but why a letter written in uncertainty? A letter to whom? From whom? You know.
Huh.
I mean, a letter could be interpreted to be the story of a certain individual that we don't know what's going to be in the story. but you get to decide. You get to, I don't know. I'm stretching here a little bit.
This is a post hoc rationalization, but
yeah.
something to do with the love letter from the Fifth Era.
I thought about that, and I'm not 100% sold on it.
Yeah.
That seems.
think
I mean,
he intended
that's
to write
obviously
it at
not
that
the
point.
original intent because the love letter wasn't written yet. But
Yeah.
Had the love letter been written before, then I think you have something.
Yeah.
And I think the letter would be capital L in that case, if that's what it was referencing.
Yeah.
In that scenario.
Yeah.
I agree, Johnny. That's kind of the way I always kind of thought about it.
Yeah.
But
Johnny is saying that the letter written in uncertainty is Chim itself.
Yeah, and it's I concede that is not a super tight connection. I like more the idea. I think you guys are right in the respect that I think it's a reference to the player being. I think it's a letter written in uncertainty in the respect that it's a plea that may not work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, it can be interpreted however the fuck you want, but I think that's I think that's where we're kind of supposed to go with that idea. Is the idea of a intermittent hopes enough to answer all the things not yet queried. It's
or is it okay? Hot take here. Is the Nerevarine the paper upon which Vivec wrote the letter through her teachings? You are the letter written in uncertainty.
A blank page.
I don't know when the Nerevarine coming. I don't know who it's going to be, but these are your instructions. I'm uncertain
that has some
who this
very,
letter
very
is going
tasty.
to.
That has some very, very tasty outputs from the whole idea of personal identity. If you're going into Lockean philosophy, the idea of a person being a tabula rasa is the phrase that is going to have people keying into that, and then their experiences are written upon them to determine what they are and how they act and everything else.
Who did the writing is the big thing here. Is it the ruling king, the hortator, the player, or is it Vivec who's doing the writing? And because I mean, if we think about it in a cynical kind of way, Vivec always has a very selfish reason for doing things, and I think that's supported by what Sotasil says. Vivec wants to be everything and do everything. It's self-gratification. And so if we view it that way, that Vivec is doing the writing, then it seems to almost imply that the Nerevarine is a vehicle for Vivec to get what Z wants.
Yes. Particularly how it's put over in the sermons.
Yeah, exactly. Which then bring us to Coda, and I mean, I've heard in the past, I've heard in the past that Vivec is trying to hit Amaranth and needs Jubal to get it done. Jubal, in my opinion, is a Nerevarine. After the prophecies have been fulfilled and the cycle just continues. And so Jubal was the one for whom these sermons were actually written. But Vivec didn't know that at the time. But it also is applicable to the Nerevarine in a prophetic sense.
But it also has some very icky connotations, which I'm sure has been brought up somewhere before. I don't know whether this is something Michael's touched on in his writings, but it would not surprise me. Is that the idea of Vivec essentially grooming Jubal into being?
Yes. Yeah. Well, because what is the quote? I don't know if
yes, and Chris's reaction is exactly the proper one.
Well, I don't remember. I don't remember if it was an actual canon source or not. But I recall in relation to Bardal Lyrock falling to Vivec and causing the eruptions, and that Vivec herself didn't stop it. I recall there being a quote of "I do this for love," or I do this out of love, or something like that. And that the interpretation is that I have to do this so that the things that it will cause are the things that I want to happen, which would be Jubal.
Later, and by which I mean much later, my reign will be remembered as an act of the highest love.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
And so on. That's later. That's later on in the sermons.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that killing everyone is the path through that rock falling and crashing and craters and the scathing bay and all that. It's necessary for Amaranth to happen. Because Jubal needs to happen. Jubal can't happen if the Dunmer don't end up on Masser. The Dunmer can't end up on Masser if they're not expelled from Morrowind.
It's all very sort of Zinchi kind of like claiming that it was all part of your plan when it works out at the end, and nobody can say any different.
And Baka, it is absolutely Vivec's golden path. We brought that up a lot on this cast.
And there's an interpretation that Vivec is just some conniving bitch like whispering into Jubal's ear, hijacking Jubal's own divinity to kind of
Macbeth's wife.
Something kind of like that. That's something I've heard. I don't know that I jive with it personally, but I mean, in this interpretation, it's interesting.
Well, we'll see how the television shows remember her in the years to come. But that's Serban 15, folks. Let's see. Up next, guess what lesson is next? I don't know. It's tough. How high can you count?
Counting.
It's not
7?
20. No.
7?
It's not 7.
It's not 7. Okay.
It's not 17.
15.
Come on.
35.
What comes after 15? Come on, guys. Come on. Think real hard. It's not 35.
It's a magic number. 16.
That's it. That's right. It's 16.
A bridge. 16. A bridge.
Wow.
No. The letter J. No. So,
I was trying to channel some Monty Python there.
Yeah, 1660, a duck. Thank you, Baka. Very good.
Which is made of wood.
And so we're gonna. That is of course the. Speaking of dumbasses, that's a Parliament of Craters time. So it's one of my favorite bits in the sermons.
We'll get to do that. Wise in the ways of science.
Yes.
That's I'm gonna have to do some thinking about that one, because that one's gonna be a lot of me going otherwise.
Right on, Felix. God damn it. So thanks for tuning in. Now I feel like watching Monty Python. Emails, like, subscribe, etc. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Please, if you have any questions, email us at selectiveslorecast@gmail.com. We will do our best to answer them. We are plowing through the 36 lessons at the moment. If you hadn't already guessed from getting this far.
Yes. Surprise!
So it might take us a while to get to anything that's not 36 lessons related.
Maybe not. We might need a break at some point. So.
There are those who call me Tim.
Tim? Yeah. Okay. You had any? Okay. Well, all right. Well, maybe we'll get to that later. Okay. So, bye.
Bye.
All right.